Hi guys, it's Jim. Today's video is making a couple of, one roller wheel. I've got a whole bunch of them yet to make, but making roller wheels for a fishing rod lathe. They're basically idler wheels that are very similar to a steady rest on a standard metal lathe. These are 2.5 inch. They're 140 thousandths thick. I cut them off on the bandsaw to start with from 2.5 inch round stock. And then I've got another set of jaws that go in that 3 jaw that I can hold it from the outside, and I bore the 3/4 inch hole. And then I put the disc on that little expanding arbor that you see there in the center, and that's just made out of 3/4 inch aluminum. I drilled and tapped it, and I shaped the bolt and the hex head there and the hole to kind of mate. It's just kind of a random. I just kind of eyeballed it and tapered it down so that it would expand out, so I can push that disc onto the arbor, and then I tighten up that bolt, and then that spreads out the arbor and holds it real tight. I tap it up against the 3 jaw there in the picture in the video just to get it as straight as I can. These things turn pretty slow on the fishing rod lathe, so none of this is terribly critical, although I am trying to do as good a job as I can. It's more of a learning exercise for me than anything else. All started out, I wanted to make some spoked wheels, and I've got a couple pictures at the end with a 5-spoked wheel that's a 3-inch diameter. And those turned out okay, but boy howdy are they a bunch of work. I'm doing all this manually. I don't have a CNC machine, although I would love to have one of each. Right now I'm happy with the manual mill, but I can definitely see the benefit and advantage of having a CNC for something exactly like this, because you could program that, and I need to make like 12. And if I could have programmed it, I would have probably done it with 5-spoked wheels, or maybe 3 or 4, since we started out with 3-inch, and it looks like 2.5 is plenty big, and that makes it a little bit easier to do. Here I'm just deburring that first side on the center so it pushes on there nice, and then I push it on there and try to twist it a little bit just to try to get it nice and straight, and then tighten it up and check it and see if it's on there straight. I'll face the second side here, and then I put a 40 thousandths depth of cut groove in it in the center, and then that holds an O-ring when it's all done. I did have a question on one of my other videos about the lathe, which I thought was a good question, and I wish I could do a better job of addressing it. But it's basically, you've had your lathe now for a couple of months. Do you still like it? And kind of, would you do it again, or would you do something different? And I do still like this. This is the G0752 lathe. It's the just like the 602, but this lathe, the 752, has the VFD, variable frequency drive, on it, and I really like that part of it. I've had one other little Unimat lathe. I still have it, and I've already learned so much with this lathe, and have been able to do things I could never do on that small lathe. And that variable speed is, I couldn't live without it. I don't know. I suppose you get used to it, and changing belts isn't a huge deal, but it's so nice. Like on this, I can do a roughing cut on this face at pretty slow speed, and then speed it up on the way out, and do a finish pass on the way out, and I don't even have to slow down much. I just reach up there and I turn the dial. And you probably can't see it very well, but up in the upper left corner there, I made a new dial. It's a 10-turn knob. It takes 10 turns to go from the low speed to the high speed. And they do that to help with the electronics. If you've got a lot of mass rotating there, and you try to stop it too quick, it'll act like a generator, and it messes up the VFD, and then it stops, and it'll give an error code. And all that's internal. I've never seen it, but this is what I understand from another video that one of the guys that commented did a little bit of research, and he actually put the secondary panel on the front of his. But Anyway, I've got that little knob that I made. It's just like a hand wheel knob with a free rotating handle on the outside perimeter of it. So I can turn the speed up and down real easily. It's much easier to do it that way than it was with the plastic 10-turn knob. So I like the lathe. I haven't found any big complaints with it, but I'm a real new machinist. This is a hobby for me. I'm not doing it professionally. So take all that with a grain of salt. If you're watching this video and you're interested at all in a grizzly, you're probably not you're not doing it professionally, or if you are, you just wanted something for home. And to me, this was a good compromise. I couldn't find used stuff in my area. I didn't want to restore something, and I didn't want to worry about getting something that was broke or damaged or wore out that I wouldn't be able to identify until I got it home and started trying to use it. So this works good for me. The lathe shipped really fast. I do also have the G0759 mill that's the one with the shoot, you guys know what I'm talking about, the digital readout. And it took a while to get, and I kind of got caught by that big strike they had out on the West Coast. It was probably sitting on a boat for a month while they figured out how they were going to unload it without employees. But anyway, I'm happy with it. I don't have a problem with the Chinese stuff. I mean, sure, give me some really nice, perfect domestic machine for the same price. I'd love to do it, but you're not going to find that, and that's a whole nother story. I don't even want to get into it. But, yeah, I'm happy with the lathe. I got the 4-way tool for I got the quick change tool post right away. I didn't even have the lathe up on the bench, and I already had some of the parts before the lathe showed up. But I love the quick change tool post. I wouldn't do without that. I made a little rack. You can see several of the tool holders sitting up there to the right, and it's great. I ordered a couple extra, and I need to order a few more. But love that quick change tool post. Not sure what to do yet with the wrench there on the top. I redid that or put the wrench on it. A lot of guys are doing a more permanent handle, making a nut and all that. That wrench gets in my way, and I'm re-indexing it all the time. If I'm taking tools in and out, the wrench kind of gets in the way. So I don't know what I'll do. I'm going to play with the wrench there, use that for a while and see how it goes. I don't have the backsplash on the lathe. It's sitting on a bench that has a stainless backsplash on it, and I put an extra 3/4 inch piece of plywood on top of that bench. And it's got a light on it on the back of the bench, so I just left off the backsplash. I actually had it on there for a while, and then I removed it. I like the 3-jaw chuck, and it comes with the 4-jaw and a faceplate. Yeah, it's a hobby lathe. If you got questions, you can leave them in the comment. I'd be happy to answer stuff. I don't have enough experience to tell you, well, this is terrible and this is great. It works. It all works good for me and for the stuff I'm doing. And I feel like I have used it a fair amount. I've done about 3 or 4 projects for other people now, and not had really too much issue or desire to have something different, or where I couldn't do something that I wanted to do. For me, most of it is still just the learning curve of, well, how do I hold like these discs that you see me working on right here? How do you hold that thing? And that was the big puzzle in this project, figuring out how to cut it on the bandsaw first, and then how do you hold it so that you can face the entire thing and put the groove in it and all that. So I like it. It's working real good for me. So there I've cut the 40 thousandths deep slot. I think here I'm going to change out the tool. In this video I used a threading tool to kind of knock the edges off of the 2 sides and the inside of the slot. And then I even put a file on it because it wasn't perfect, so I decided just to file it a little bit to try and smooth it up. And again, these things, they don't have to be perfect, the speeds that they turn. I mean, you're turning it manually. You put the fishing rod in and set it in and adjust all the wheels. You'll have at least 3 or 4, maybe even 5 sets of these along a rod if you're doing a long rod. And then a lot of this, you're turning the rod with your fingers, so it's not even a machine turning it. So there's an RPM, like 2 or 3 RPM a minute or something. Maybe you're winding thread around the line guides and that sort of stuff. And then you do hook it up with the motor and turn it, like when you're doing a finish on it, you're painting on a finish, and then you want it to turn all night long. And that I'm not even sure on how that's going to work, because you obviously can't have the finish where the wheels are supporting it. So here I am with the threading tool, just knocking the corners down. Now I'm going to back out there, and I think this is where I put the file on it. And I turned down the volume on this. That was part of the problem with the first video that I put up. There's so much background noise, and I didn't notice it at first. The first part of the video was just fine. And then about 2 or 3 minutes into it, then all of a sudden I got full volume, and it was really distracting. You probably couldn't even hear me. So that takes care of the lathe part of this one, and so now we're moving over to the mill. And that's a phase 2 rotary table with their 3-jaw chuck. And it also came with 2 sets of jaws, so you can put the other set in there to reverse and hold stuff from the inside instead of the outside. And putting a couple of little pieces of aluminum angle in there to hold that thing up off the jaws. I'm going to plunge down clear through the part and then do 3 slots. I'm not actually doing spokes on this particular one, and we've decided to just do 3 slots, but that's a 5/16 end mill cutter. So we're just doing the width of the cutter and doing 3 slots, roughly 120 degrees each, but not quite because of the width of the cutter and the spoke allowance. And I've got a picture of the spreadsheet that I use coming up here. And if anybody wants this spreadsheet, leave me a comment and we'll figure out how I can get it to you. Basically, I can email it to you. I use it on my iPad right there in the shop next to the mill. Sits on the bench right next to the mill, so I can look over at it and read the numbers off of that. And I spent one morning working this all out on paper. I got some tips from a few guys on the Hobby Machinist website, and then I worked through it, and all this was with 4 or 5 spokes, just kind of learning the math of it. Basically, it's 2 pi r to give you the circumference, and then you figure out all the angles and blah blah blah. So I went through that sheet, or created that sheet, and you can see there are 3 spokes and spoke width of a 1/4 inch and the inner radius, outer radius. So you can plug in your numbers there, and the way I did it, it's set up to do like up to 6 spokes, so you just ignore everything past how many spokes you're going to do. And so I still use it on this just for the slots. It's basically you set either the inner or the outer diameter, and then it calculates all of the starting and stopping angles. That's really what you're after, as the start and stop angle number. So you saw me turn it to get to the initial starting angle, which was like 23 degrees and 57 minutes or whatever that number was. But you got to have those starting and stopping numbers so that you can turn the handle on the rotary table and get the right spot. The only other way to do it, which I think is even more common than this, but I don't have any CAD background, and I don't have a PC or laptop I wanted to do it on my iPad since I have that in the shop all the time anyway. And so I did the spreadsheet. It's Excel compatible, so if you've got Microsoft Excel or anything that can read that, you can have copies of this if you want it. So I plunged down through. I've got all the gibs snugged up a little bit, so stuff still moves, but it's not loose on the Z-axis and in the X and Y on the mill. Of course, I already zeroed this before we got to the video, so the table was zeroed on the X and the Y with the rotary table and the cutter. And so here I'm just cranking and I'm looking over at the spreadsheet for the ending number and watching the number on the little tick mark on the table. And when I get to the tick mark, then I'll grab the wheel and turn it that last little bit. I think it's 23 minutes. Right there I'm twisting it from whatever the major number is to 23 minutes to give me the stopping point. And then I'll probably shut the mill off here or just pull it up out and move over to the next slot where it starts and do the same thing, and it just is rinse and repeat. A little bit of oil there to help it cut better. Here's another spot. So there you can see I went 24.37 up to 95.23, and then I pull out and then reposition to 144.37, and now we're going to go to 215.23. And couldn't do it without that spreadsheet. I mean, you could. You'd have to sit there and calculate it all out. And if you're doing spokes where you're actually doing the inside and the outside, it's different. So the inside radius is a different angle than the outside radius. Even though you'd think it's the same, it's really not. And the travel distance, of course, is different. So it's an interesting project and kind of fun learning how to do that and putting it in the spreadsheet. But the gibs being tight, it helped if the Z-axis was loose and it would drop down through real easy. I got a little bit more vibration. I could tell it was kind of making things vibrate a little bit, so with them just a little bit snug, and that seemed to make it a little bit better. And this is a best practice question for you pros out there. I don't know if I should be doing that in a different way or not. If that's the way to do it, just plunge and clear down through. The thing's only 160 thousandths thick. That's how thick the disc is. So I'm plunging 160 thousandths, and then I go a couple thousandths past so that the cutter hangs out below, and then I start turning the table crank handle. But takes longer to plunge down through it than it does to actually cut the slot itself. A little bit of oil for the third slot, and cranking it around to the final starting position for the third slot. And one more time. I like the mill, and I'm really glad I got the DRO. I had a couple of tips from people before I ever ordered it that said, yeah, get the DRO, it'll be so much easier, and I can see that. And I've used it already enough to know that it's like, boy, that's kind of like the variable frequency drive on the lathe that I couldn't do without that. I haven't done bolt circles with it yet. That DRO will do bolt circles and a line of holes and a couple other things. It looks kind of neat, and I just haven't had time to try that kind of stuff yet, but I'll get around to it eventually. I think at the end here I got a still shot of the screen of the DRO. I like it. A lot of guys are getting a different mill. It's the same basic mill, I guess, but there's lots of chatter, and I'm sure if you're looking and watching, you probably already looked this stuff up, or you already have it said and done. But I thought they did a real good job of the install of the DRO. I'm happy with it. So it's another one of those things. Like, I don't want to do the install. I might do a CNC conversion on this thing someday, but I've got a friend who did that, and he did a great job. His looks really nice. If I decide to do a CNC on this thing, I'll probably try to get him to help me and copy most of the stuff he did, because his install looks really nice. I mean, it looks like a professional installation. I'd be tickled with something that looked that nice. So there's a shot of the table with the index tick mark just sitting at 0 before I would have done anything. Here's a shot of one of the blanks. I'm not sure if this is the one that we just saw. That looks like a 3-inch, so, and probably a smaller cutter. I've already done like 20 of these things at this point. That's a shot of the DRO when I was doing 3-inch wheels, and 1.2 inch was the outside diameter for the outside edge of the spoked slots. And there's one of the 5 spoked wheels. That's one of the earlier ones, and that's the steady rest thing there. I'm going to make some modifications to those too. And there's a shot of the expanding arbor that I used to hold those on the lathe. And you can see the slits in there that lets it expand. And there's another shot of one of the wheels. And I think coming up here, another wheel it looks like with a rubber O-ring tire on it. And some motivational liquid behind it. And there's a shot of one of the earliest attempts. I did like just a relief pass to kind of test all the theories and the numbers and stuff. And there's one of the smaller ones. I think I did a 4 or 5 spoke on a 2.5 inch, and that's also the Delrin plug in the center that you see there. That would have been good if I'd had video of that. But thanks for watching, guys. If you got questions or comments, just leave them, and I'd be happy to share that spreadsheet if anybody wants it.